October 3rd, 1951, 2:14 a.m. The knock didn't come from the door. It came from the wall. 3 short taps, a pause, then one more. Inside the apartment on 131st Street, the radio was still playing low, Billie Holiday bleeding through static, but nobody was listening. The money on the table hadn't been counted, the glasses hadn't been touched, and the man holding the envelope hadn't opened it, because the knock was wrong, too close, too familiar. Bumpy Johnson stood still in the center of the room, coat still on, hat still in his hand. He didn't reach for a gun. He didn't look toward the window. His eyes were fixed on the wall to his left, the shared wall. That's where the knock had come from. Illinois Gordon swallowed hard. "That ain't police," he whispered. Bumpy didn't answer. Another sound followed. Not a voice, not footsteps, just the soft drag of furniture being moved on the other side. Careful, quiet, like someone making space. Someone who knew the apartment. That's when the problem showed itself, because the only people who knew the wall knock were inside the room. Bumpy finally moved. He set his hat down slowly on the table, right next to the unopened envelope. His fingers lingered there longer than necessary, as if the hat might say something if he let go too soon. "Kill the radio," he said. Illinois reached over and twisted the dial. Silence dropped hard. The knock came again. Same pattern. 3, pause, 1. This time, Bumpy answered, not with words, but by pressing his knuckles once against the wall. A response came immediately. 2 taps. Illinois' face drained of color. "That ain't possible," he said. But Bumpy already knew the truth. The wall knock wasn't being used to get in. It was being used to confirm. Somewhere in the building, someone had just verified Bumpy Johnson's location without stepping into the hallway, without alerting a lookout, without risking a thing. That's when the phone rang. Illinois jumped for it instinctively, then stopped when Bumpy lifted one finger. "No," Bumpy said quietly. "Let it ring." The phone rang 6 times. Stopped. Rang again. Outside, a car engine turned over. Not rushed. Not panic, patient. The envelope on the table finally earned Bumpy's attention. He slid a finger under the seal and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No letterhead, no signature, just an address, a time, and a name that had never once been written down before. The name belonged to a man who had eaten at Bumpy's table. Illinois leaned close. "Who is it?" Bumpy folded the paper once, then again. Precise, controlled. "A man who thinks he's already safe," he said. Another sound from the wall, softer now. A single tap, confirmation complete. Illinois reached for his gun. "We need to move. Now." Bumpy shook his head. "No," he said. "If we move, we admit we were expected." He crossed the room and opened the window an inch. Just enough to hear the street. 2 cars, one idling too clean, the other already leaving. This wasn't a hit. Hits came loud or fast. This was a reminder. Bumpy closed the window and finally looked at Illinois. "Tell nobody," he said. "Not the boys, not the runners, not even May." Illinois frowned. "Boss, if someone this close, if I say it out loud," Bumpy cut in, "it becomes real before it's ready." He sat down at the table and poured himself a drink he didn't touch. For the first time that night, the room felt smaller. Illinois lowered his voice. "You think it's the Italians?" Bumpy didn't answer right away. Because Italians didn't knock like that. Police didn't either. This had been done by someone who'd learned the rhythm of someone who'd waited long enough to be invisible, someone who'd watched Bumpy trust people. "Worse," Bumpy said finally. "I think it's someone who knows I won't move until I'm sure." The phone rang again. This time, Bumpy picked it up. "Yes," he said. The voice on the other end didn't disguise itself. It didn't threaten. It didn't explain. It asked one question. "You still sleeping where you always sleep?" Bumpy smiled. Thin, cold. "Yes," he said. For now. The line went dead. Illinois stared at him. "That was someone who just told me the clock started," Bumpy replied. He stood, picked up his hat, and placed it back on his head. "Get me the list," he said. "Not the short one, the old one." Illinois hesitated. "That list ain't been touched in years." "I know," Bumpy said. "That's why it's clean." As Illinois moved toward the door, Bumpy looked once more at the wall. No more knocks, no more signal, just silence. The kind that only shows up when a decision has already been made somewhere else. And whatever had been set in motion tonight didn't need Bumpy Johnson dead. Not yet. It needed him watching the wrong people, while the right one stayed close enough to knock. October 4th, 1951, 6:09 a.m. Morning came without permission. The city woke up like nothing had happened. Milk bottles clinking on stoops, radios coughing up the news, shoes scraping sidewalk. But inside Bumpy Johnson's apartment, the night never ended. The old list sat on the table now. Not typed, not neat. Handwritten names, some crossed out, some circled, some stained by age and whiskey. Men who had been close once, men who had waited, men who had survived long enough to be forgotten. Illinois stood across from Bumpy, arms folded tight, eyes locked on the paper like it might move. "You sure you want this one?" Illinois asked. Bumpy didn't look up. "That's why," he said. The name at the center of the page hadn't been circled before. Bumpy had drawn that line himself. Slow, deliberate. Not because the man was dangerous, because he wasn't. He was reliable, always on time, always respectful, never ambitious enough to attract attention. Those were the ones that lasted. "Where is he?" Bumpy asked. Illinois hesitated. "Same place as always." Bumpy nodded once. Of course he... By 7:02 a.m., the car was already moving uptown. No entourage, no second vehicle, no signal. Just Bumpy in the back seat. Illinois driving, and silence heavy enough to press against the window. They passed familiar corners. Familiar faces, men who nodded without knowing why they felt relief when they saw him still breathing. That was part of the danger. Power makes people comfortable. Comfort makes people careless. The car stopped, 2 blocks short. "We walk from here," Bumpy said. The building was nothing special. Brick, narrow, forgettable. The kind of place men rented when they didn't want questions. They took the stairs. 3rd floor. Left turn. 2nd door. Illinois raised his hand to knock. Bumpy stopped. "No," he said. "I go in alone." Illinois frowned. "Boss, if he's clean, he deserves that." Bumpy replied. "If he's not, you won't help anyway." Illinois stepped back. Bumpy knocked once. The door opened almost immediately. The man inside smiled when he saw him. Genuine surprise. Real warmth. "Mr. Johnson," he said. "Didn't expect." Bumpy stepped past him into the apartment without asking. Small place? Clean. Coffee already made. 2 cups on the counter. 2. That detail didn't scream guilt. It whispered habit. "Sit," Bumpy said. The man obeyed without argument. That was the problem. Bumpy didn't sit. He walked. Slow. Observing. The window. The ashtray. The radio. The wall. Nothing wrong. Nothing obvious. Bumpy stopped behind him. "Someone knocked on my wall last night," Bumpy said. The man laughed lightly. "City's full of knock." 3. Pause. 1. The man's shoulders stiffened. Just a fraction. Barely enough to accuse, but enough. "That sound familiar?" Bumpy asked. The man swallowed. "Can't say it does." Bumpy leaned closer. "I've only ever heard it answered by men who learned it from me." Silence stretched. The radio crackled softly in the background. Jazz, careless, alive. The man exhaled slowly. "You're being careful," he said. "That ain't an answer," Bumpy replied. The man stood suddenly. Too fast. Bumpy didn't move. "If someone's playing games," the man said, "you shouldn't assume." Bumpy's hand came up. Not a gun. Just 2 fingers. "Who asked you where I sleep?" The man froze. That was enough. He sat back down. "They didn't ask," he said quiet. "They told me they already knew." Bumpy circled. Predator calm. "And you believed I didn't have a choice." "You always got a choice," Bumpy said. "You just don't always like the cost." The man looked up. Eyes wet but steady. "They said it wasn't about killing you. Said they just needed you." Distracted. Bumpy stopped walking. "That's the part you should have told me." "I didn't know how," the man whispered. "If I warned you, and they were lying, you'd still be alive." Bumpy finished. The man shook his head. "They promised nobody gets hurt." Bumpy leaned down until they were eye level. "That's what men say when they want something to happen slow." The man broke then. Shoulders collapsing inward. "They already took something from me." Bumpy straightened. "What?" "My name," the man said. "My future. They told me when you fall, I don't." Bumpy turned toward the window. Outside, a delivery truck idled too long. He smiled. That answered another question. "You didn't betray me for money," Bumpy said. "You did it for permission." The man didn't deny it. Bumpy walked to the door and opened it. Illinois was already there. "Take him," Bumpy said. "Somewhere quiet." Illinois nodded. As they led the man away, Bumpy stayed behind, alone again, just like the night before. He touched the wall once. No response. Good. Because now he knew. The traitor wasn't trying to kill him. They were trying to replace him. And whoever thought that could happen without blood hadn't learned Bumpy Johnson yet. October 6th, 1951. 11:58 p.m. The city learned to whisper again. After the man disappeared, Harlem didn't erupt. It adjusted. Runners slowed their step. Corners changed hands without arguments. Doors stayed closed longer than usual. Nobody asked questions because questions had weight now. Bumpy Johnson watched it all from a distance. That was the mistake they expected him to make, to clamp down, to interrogate, to show force. Instead, he did nothing visible. He kept the same schedule, sat at the same table, slept in the same bed. He became predictable on purpose. The betrayal wasn't a knife, it was a delay. A hesitation introduced into the system, like sand in a watch. And sand only works if the owner doesn't realize time is being stolen. At exactly 11:58 p.m., Bumpy stood at the window of Small's Paradise and counted headlights. One car passed too slow. Another didn't pass at all. Illinois waited behind him. "They're watching," Illinois said. "I know," Bumpy replied. "That's why we're late." They didn't enter through the front. They never did anymore. The back hallway smelled like spilled beer and old sweat. Familiar, honest. The room upstairs was already full when they stepped in. 10 men. All trust, all quiet. And one chair left empty. Nobody spoke. Because they all knew whose chair it was. Bumpy took his seat but didn't lean back. He rested forward, elbows on knees, eyes scanning face. He didn't accuse, didn't test. He let silence work. Silence always found the weak spot. Finally, one man cleared his throat. "That chair ain't empty by accident," he said. Bumpy nodded. "No, it's empty because it chose." The room tightened. "He wasn't supposed to disappear," another voice said, defensive. Too fast. Bumpy turned his head slowly. "Who told you that?" he asked. The man froze. Nobody else looked at him, which told Bumpy everything he needed. "They told you," Bumpy continued. "Not asked, told." The man's mouth opened, closed. "They said it was temporary," he said finally. "That the man would be back once things settle." "Things don't settle," Bumpy said. "They finish." A sound outside, a car door slamming. Too close, too confident. Bumpy stood. "Listen carefully," he said. "What's happening right now ain't about me losing control. It's about someone testing how much delay they can afford." Illinois shifted his weight. "We should clear the room." "No," Bumpy said. "We should let them hear us breathing." He walked to the wall and tapped once. "Nothing. Good. They think replacing me means moving pieces," Bumpy continued. "But pieces don't move unless someone tells them it's safe." He turned back to the table. "Who told you it was safe?" Nobody answered. That answer came 5 minutes later. Not from inside the room, but from the street below. A single gunshot, not close enough to be a threat, not far enough to be random. A signal. Illinois moved toward the door. Bumpy stopped. "That shot wasn't for us," Bumpy said. "It was for someone who needed reminding." The men in the room shifted uneasily. "Of what?" someone asked. Bumpy smiled. "That they're running out of room to hide." He reached into his coat and placed something on the table. A ledger. Old, worn. The kind men forgot existed. "This book," Bumpy said, "is why none of you are rich enough to leave me." The men leaned in despite themselves. "It tracks patience," he continued. "Who waited, who rushed, who took shortcuts when they thought nobody was looking." One man stood abruptly. "You don't trust us." Bumpy looked up. "I trust consequences," he said. "They're honest." The man sat back down slowly. Outside, another car engine turned over. Different car. That mattered. "They think they're close," Illinois said quietly. "They are," Bumpy replied. "Just not to me." He closed the ledger and slid it back into his coat. "Tonight," he said, "everyone goes home alone. No talking, no favors, no warning." The men stood one by one and filed out. All except one. The man nearest the empty chair hadn't moved. "You got something you want to say?" Bumpy asked. The man looked up. His eyes were steady. Too steady. "They promised me a seat," he said. Bumpy nodded. "They promise everybody that." The man swallowed. "I didn't think you'd notice." "That's the only reason you thought it might work," Bumpy said. A long pause. "What happens now?" the man asked. Bumpy stood. "Now," he said, "you wait." "For what?" "For them to realize the traitor wasn't you." The man frowned. "Then who?" Bumpy leaned in close enough that the question died. "The one who never needed permission," he said softly. Outside, sirens wailed. "Not for them, not yet." Bumpy put his hat on and walked out, without another word. Behind him, the chair stayed empty, but not for long. October 9th, 1951, 3:41 a.m. The first mistake happened in the quiet. That was how Bumpy knew it wasn't his. The car followed him for 6 blocks, without realizing he'd already clocked it. Same headlight, same distance, same impatience every time he slowed at a light that didn't need respect. Amateurs followed like that. or men who believed the city belonged to them now. Bumpy turned down 129th instead of Lennox. That hesitation cost them everything. By the time the engine corrected, Bumpy was already out of the car, standing under a streetlight that hadn't worked in years. Except tonight. Illinois stepped out behind. The trailing car stopped too fast. Doors opened too slow. 3 men, none of them familiar. That was deliberate. Wrong night, Bumpy said calmly. One of them smiled, nervous, too eager. We ain't here for trouble. Bumpy tilted his head. Then you should have stayed home. One of the men reached inside his coat. Illinois moved. The sound wasn't loud, just final. A body hit pavement. Another ran. The third froze. Bumpy walked toward him. Who sent you? He asked. The man shook his head violently. I don't know names. That's fine, Bumpy replied. I know roll. He stepped close. Who told you I wouldn't see you coming? The man swallowed. The one who already sits where you used to. Bumpy stopped. That answer landed heavier than a gunshot. Where? The man gave the address without bargaining, smart enough to know bargaining was useless. Illinois finished it before the sirens arrived. By 4:22 a.m., Bumpy was alone again, washing blood from his hands in a sink that had seen worse. The address burned in his mind. Not a club, not an office, a church basement. That was clever. People don't expect betrayal to prey. By sunrise, the city felt different, like it was holding its breath wrong. Bumpy waited until night. October 9th, 1951, 9:06 p.m. The basement smelled like old wood and candle wax, folding chairs, coffee stains, a podium scarred by decades of nervous hands, and at the center, him, the man Bumpy had never once put on a list, because he'd never needed to. He didn't stand when Bumpy entered. That told the room everything. I wondered when you'd come, the man said calmly. You knew I would, Bumpy replied. That's why I didn't hide. Bumpy looked around. Empty chairs, no witness. No, he said. That's why you chose a place where people forgive. The man smiled sadly. People forgive? Honesty. They forgive regret. Bumpy correct. You don't have it. The man finally stood. I built this while you were busy surviving, he said. I kept things running. Quiet. Clean. Nobody bled, unless they had to. And nobody knocked, unless I wasn't listening, Bumpy replied. Silence thickened. You think this is about replacing you, the man said. It isn't. It's about time. Bumpy stepped closer. You don't get to decide when I'm finished. I already did, the man said softly. The night you didn't move. Bumpy understood then. The wall knock. The delay. The test. They hadn't been checking if Bumpy was alive. They were checking if he was still feared. And what if I am? Bumpy asked. The man's eyes flickered. Then this ends badly. Bumpy smiled. It already has. He reached into his coat and placed the ledger on the podium. I never needed, he said. I kept it so you'd think I did. The man stared at. What's that supposed to mean? It means I wanted to see how far you'd go before you thought I was weak. Bumpy leaned in. You went far enough to forget something. The man frowned. What? I never sleep where I always sleep, Bumpy said. I just let people think I do. The realization hit late. Too late. Footsteps echoed above. Not police. Not Italians. Harlem. Men who hadn't been invited came anyway. The man backed away. You said no blood. Bumpy nodded. I said I wouldn't spill it. The door opened. The room filled. Not with guns. With memory. Faces that remembered who held things together when patience mattered. You wanted permission, Bumpy said. Here it is. The man looked around. Desperate now. You can't kill me in a church. Bumpy stepped back. I don't have to. The crowd closed in. Not violent. Judgment does more damage when it's quiet. As Bumpy turned toward the stairs, he heard the man call out. You think this ends it? Bumpy paused. No, he said. This is where it starts making sense. Outside, the night breathed again. The city exhaled. One chapter left unwritten. October 12th, 1951. 4:58 a.m. The city didn't celebrate. That was how Bumpy knew it was over. No gunfire. No rumors racing faster than the trains. No bodies laid out as warning. Just a slow return to rhythm. Footsteps finding old paths again. Voices rising back to normal volume. Doors opening without hesitation. Power doesn't announce itself when it's restored. It exhales. Bumpy Johnson sat alone in the apartment he no longer slept in, watching dawn bleed into the skyline. The wall was quiet now. No knocks. No signal. Whoever had invented that language had lost the right to speak it. Illinois stood by the window, jacket still on, eyes tired. It's done, Illinois said. Bumpy nodded but didn't turn around. No, he replied. It's absorbed. Illinois frowned. That man was never the disease, Bumpy said. He was the fever. Illinois waited. The real mistake, Bumpy continued, was thinking betrayal needed courage. It doesn't. It needs patience. Outside, a street sweeper passed, erasing the night without caring what it took with it. The man from the church basement hadn't died screaming. He hadn't begged either. Worse, he'd tried to explain, tried to make his choice sound reasonable once the room turned against him. That was the cost he hadn't calculated. People forgive violence faster than they forgive justification. Bumpy finally turned from the window. He thought I'd fight to keep the throne, Bumpy said. Didn't understand I was never sitting on it. Illinois tilted his head. Then, where were you? Standing behind the decision. Bumpy answered. That's where power actually lived. The phone rang. Once. Illinois reached for it out of habit. Bumpy shook his head. No, let it ring. It stopped. Minutes later, footsteps sounded in the hallway. Familiar. A knock at the door. Not the wall. The door. Illinois opened it. Two men stood there. Runners. Nervous, but relieved. They want to know what to do, one said. Things? They're moving again. Bumpy picked up his hat. Tell them to stop waiting, he said. If they don't know what to do, they're already late. The men nodded and left. Illinois watched them go. That's it? That's always it. Bumpy. He crossed the room and picked up the old list from the table. The names looked smaller now, less important. He folded it once, then tore it clean down the middle. Illinois raised an eyebrow. Sure? Bumpy dropped the pieces into the ashtray and lit a match. I don't need reminders, he said. I need memory. The paper burned fat. Outside, Harlem woke up like it always did. Not because it was safe, but because it had learned how to survive uncertainty. Illinois broke the silence. What if someone tries again? Bumpy smiled. Tired this time. They will, he said. That's the mistake people keep making. They think this was about one traitor. He put on his coat. It was about distance. Illinois followed him to the door. You ever going to tell people how close it really was? Illinois asked. Bumpy paused. If I do, he said, they'll start measuring close instead of loyalty. He opened the door. In the hallway, the light flickered. Not broken, just old. One last thing, Illinois said. That knock. You think anyone else knows it? Bumpy considered. No, he said. But they know what it means now. They stepped outside. The city accepted him again without comment. That was the final verdict. Because the truth didn't come from the betrayal itself. It came from what followed. Bumpy Johnson hadn't survived because he was feared. He survived because, when someone close enough to replace him tried, the city chose memory over convenience. And that decision, quiet, collective, irreversible, was the real power nobody could steal. Bumpy adjusted his hat and disappeared into Harlem as the sun climbed higher. No ceremony, no closure, just consequences settling where they belonged.